Hey, friends, welcome back to the Be the Bigger Person podcast. I'm Melissa, your faith filled friend and grieving daughter who waited until my 30s for love. And through all of this and then some, has learned a lot about growing in the Lord and being the bigger person. From grief to singleness to marriage to friendships and all the faith in between, let's have the honest and vulnerable conversations you've been looking for. Before we jump in, if something about this episode sticks out to you and makes you go, ooh, yes, take a screenshot of the episode and share it on social media and be sure to tag at Be the Bigger Person Pod. Okay, so let's jump right in. Today on the episode, we're going into grief. And we're going to talk about three things. Overarching how grief affects the way we show up in relationships. One is marriage, one is friendships, and one is family. And we're going to talk about all those things because those of you that have gone through grief understand that grief changes who you are as a person in so many ways that are like deep down into your core. Grief truly re-alters your brain. I read a study that talked about how they found that when they examined the brain, people who had gone through a traumatic brain injury and people that have experienced significant grief show up similarly in the places of their brains that are altered because of it. And so what that tells me is that grief has the same effect on us in so many ways as a traumatic brain injury. So grief brain, totally a thing. And I think it's really important because I have experienced after my mom passed now 4.5 years ago. After my mom passed, I've experienced this. And I've talked to so many people who have gone through significant loss who have talked about how relationships just feel so different after loss, whether it's that people just kind of duck out or the people don't understand. There is a significant shift in relationships and some for good. But that's what we're going to talk about because what I think really matters, it matters twofold. One is it matters for those of us that have walked through loss and are grieving, whether it was 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 20 years ago. Those of us that are grieving, I think it really matters that we don't feel like we're crazy and don't feel like there's something wrong with us or is there something about us that needs to be fixed. And I also think it matters so much for those that are friends and family and married to somebody who has experienced significant loss to also understand what it's like and be able to better navigate life and loss with their friend or their family member or their spouse. So about 5 months after my mom passed away, and I had really been struggling with friendships where I felt like the friends I remember having conversations with friends where I was like, you know that my mom passed. What are you doing? People that would just talk about things in such a way where I was like, I remember one friend literally talking about how they were so mad at their mom and they were like, oh, I could just kill her. And I was like, what? What? Or just people that honestly just didn't know how to show up. I mean, I could give you example after example, just literally people who didn't know how to show up, people who avoided talking to me about how I was doing, people that just would say really insensitive things, people that just kind of dipped out, people that I was just suddenly I woke up a month later and was like, I haven't heard from them or seen them. And I still haven't, to be honest, in so many of those cases. And so I remember about 4 or 5 months after my mom passed away, and I was really struggling with a lot of this. I had so many, and still do, incredible friends who really pushed past their discomfort, pushed through the sadness of really just having to sit with me in sadness and showed up so well for me and still do show up so well for me. But I remember really struggling with people that I thought were my good friends who would be there for me through thick and thin, who suddenly I was just like, I feel so unsupported and unloved and unseen by you. And also friends that I just felt like I didn't connect with anymore. Like, and perhaps some of you that have gone through grief and are going through grief understand this, is like, I suddenly was like, grief really knocks into you what really matters in life. Like, I remember sitting, it was a month after my mom passed, 2 months maybe, sitting in my backyard around a bonfire with friends. And all these friends were just like scrolling through their Instagram photos, and they were talking about gossipy things. And they were like just laughing about stuff that they found funny, that I was like, all of this feels so pointless. And like, I suddenly understood what Ecclesiastes talks about, where it's like everything is meaningless. Like, and I was like, I don't blame them. I don't fault them for doing this. I just don't relate to it or connect with it at all. Like, I was like, I don't actually care about the gossip. I don't care about comparing Instagram photos. I don't care about like laughing about stupid things and what, like, I want to have joy. I want to enjoy myself, but I want it to mean something. And I remember thinking like, there were so many people that and I still kind of feel this way sometimes, where I'm just like, there are so many people that when they talk about something, or they even complain about something that like feels so pointless. And trust me, I still complain about things that are pointless sometimes, but I think like I recognize that they're pointless, and yet I still complain about them. But I remember like, just even now, still like, I'll hear people complain about something and they're serious about it. And I'm just like, doesn't matter. Like, literally none of this matters. Like, and I think that's what grief does, is grief really shows you where your priorities should be and where your priorities are. And the fact that it's not that life is short. People say all the time, life is short. Life is shorter than you think it is. And so all these things that people are putting off and putting off and putting off, like, life is shorter than you think, right? Like, having the deep conversations with friends, having the things that matter, life is shorter than you think. And I just, anyway, so all that was like just rolling through my brain of just like, everything is meaningless. Like, I was a little over dramatic, but like kind of true. But also really feeling like, is it that I just have to get back to where I was? Like, is it just that I am in this sort of grief pit, and I'll climb out the other side and I'll be able to be my normal self again? And then I can like connect with the friends I kind of have lost touch with, and I can laugh with the friends that are talking about the dumb things and whatever. And I remember talking to somebody who has experienced grief when they were young. Um, and I remember just telling them all this. And they said to me, the day your mom died, part of you died that day too. And I remember them saying, like, yes, there are parts of you that will return, but there are parts of you that will never come back. And that's okay. And what I remember taking that to mean was that I am never going to be the exact same person I was before my mom died. And part of that is, yeah, there are things that I'm just going to have to put on my big girl panties and deal with, and that are going to be a struggle and are going to be hard. And there are also things that, like, I will always look at life differently now because of loss, and because I am a different person than before my mom passed away. And I remember that was so empowering to me. It kind of like gave me permission to be like, okay, yes, there are going to be things that I am going to grow back into. There are going to be things that I am going to refind about myself. But there are also things that are never going to be the same, and that's okay. And maybe some of those connect with how I connect with people. Maybe it's that some people aren't able to support me and be with me in this journey. Maybe they have to go through their own thing in their own timing, and they're not there yet. And maybe it's that sometimes there are things about the way that people talk, or the conversations that people have, or the priorities that people put in their life that I'm just not going to connect with. And that's okay. I remember hearing a quote that said years ago, that said, not everybody is equipped for a climb to the top. And it was this notion that, like, as you get higher up the mountain and more like going forward in your life into the harder things, not everybody is going to want to or be able to do that with you. And it's going to really become way more about quality and not quantity. And so I think that that's been the thing that has surprised me the most, and something that I hope that those of you that are listening that have not been through grief yet can take away as an understanding for those friends of yours in your life who have experienced grief. And I say experienced grief, there's like no timeline. Like someone might have experienced grief 30 years ago or 3 weeks ago. And it's like, yes, it's going to look different because time makes things ebb and flow. But the person who has walked through loss is going to, in so many ways, be a fundamentally different person. And they are going to recognize the brevity of life. And they're going to recognize that there are just things that don't matter anymore. This story will always sit with me. One of my really good friends, who has been like instrumental in like leading the way for me in grief. Her sister passed away really suddenly, like 4 years before my mom passed away. And we were teaching together at the time. And I remember her talking like 2 weeks before her sister passed away. She was talking about how they were redoing their kitchen and she had 2 little boys at the time. And like, I mean, so many of us have gone through like home renovations and it's just a mess. It's dust everywhere, plastic, tarp, tools, everything. And it's just a mess. And especially with 2 little ones, like they're wanting to get in everything. You're trying to keep your house clean. You're trying to keep them out of it. You're out of a kitchen, the whole nine. And I remember she was just so stressed out about it, and rightly so. And we would talk about it a lot. She would just like vent about it and, whatever. And I remember like 2 weeks after her sister passed, it was like a month after this kitchen renovation began. And I remember we were talking and I just said like, how's the kitchen? And she was like, honestly, none of it matters anymore. Like the boys can go in there and I really don't care. They can bring dust into the living room. It doesn't matter. I'm just so grateful that they're running around. And that to me illustrates how grief changes people and how connecting with somebody when you're in grief and you've experienced grief and you have that lens of grief versus when you're talking to somebody who doesn't, like that is the picture that I will go back to every time, because grief just shows you life is shorter than you think. People matter more than anything else. People matter more than things. And just the things that were so frustrating and so hard and so irritating just don't quite matter as much anymore. Like, yes, sometimes they may still frustrate you. That's normal, but like, it's not top priority. Like okay, fine. This thing happened. At least the people are still here and they're still okay. Like, and I've had a lot of those moments, similar moments where I'm just like, it literally doesn't matter. Something breaks. I'm like, it's fine. I don't care. But literally, we'll replace it. Doesn't matter to me. And so I think that is something, I think that shift in mentality is something that can make relationships and friendships really hard, is that when you've experienced a significant loss, you have this notion of the reality of life burned into you. Like there's no going around it. There's no getting past it. Like you recognize that life is short. You recognize the sadness and the anger and the bitterness and the unfairness that life can bring. And I once heard a quote that basically said, sorrow stretches the heart to make room for joy. And so, yes, while like you experience more grief and more sadness and sort of the realities of that in life, you also so much experience like increased levels of joy and increased like desire for true joy, not like the joy that's, I don't know, laughing about stuff that literally doesn't matter or talking about, I don't know, like, and it depends, each person is different, but like, this is something that I've seen across the board and talking with friends is like, who have also experienced losses. It's like the petty stuff just doesn't really seem to matter anymore. Like if they're being really honest with themselves, it's like they realize that it just kind of doesn't matter when they get to the core of who they are. So I want to encourage you in 2 things. The first is if you are somebody who's experienced loss and you are talking with friends and like the things that they're talking about, you just literally don't care. Especially this, I feel like I experienced this and I've heard from friends earlier on in loss, like as the loss still feels maybe more fresh. And I'll be honest, I'm 4.5 years in and there are days where it still feels like it literally just happened yesterday. But what I would encourage you in is if you're in those conversations with people, or if you're with friends that you would normally hang out with and they're laughing and talking about things that you're like, or they want to do things that you're like, that doesn't feel satisfying anymore. That doesn't feel like, why are we doing this? I want to encourage you two things. One is maybe it's okay that you spend less time with them. That's okay. But the other thing is voice that. Voice that in a way that feels right for you. Say like, hey, can we talk about something else? Or, hey, like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. Do you mind if we do something else? And the reality is, if they're your good friends, they're going to get that. It may take a while. But it's okay to voice that. And it's okay that if they feel uncomfortable about it, their uncomfortability is not, it may come across maybe that they're like thinking you're weird, but oftentimes it's truly just that they've never walked through this. They don't know. They need you to help them. They need you to be the one who's braving the uncharted conversations and uncharted topics so that they can learn from you. I remember a friend of mine, she got married, great guy. And like a year into marriage, one of her parents passed away. And her husband had never gone through loss. He had never had friends that walked through significant loss. And he like literally didn't understand, like did not understand. And so they would be like out at nice dinners, or they would be on a vacation or whatever. And he'd be like, babe, just have fun. Like, come on, just have fun. Like, let's just go have fun. And she'd be like, that just doesn't, I don't know. I don't want to, like, I'm just not in a headspace for this. And he like did not get it. And they had to have some very, very honest conversations where she helped him understand what she was going through. And that was really challenging for her, especially being so new in grief. And I'll be honest, like even Ivan is a gem. He has desired from day one, even before we were dating, to understand loss. He listened to this podcast. He was an avid listener. I think he still is. I don't know. We talk all the time, so maybe he doesn't need to listen. I'm sure he still does. But anyways, but he has never gone through significant loss. He's had, an uncle who passed away, and his cousins have gone through that loss, and he's walked with them through it. But he, in his own immediate circle, like both his parents are still here. And, so as we have had conversations and we have talked through when I'm having just grief hit me and I like can't figure out why or what's going on, we've had conversations about like, I'm going to verbalize to you as much as I can about what I'm feeling and what I'm navigating. But this is the first time I'm navigating all this too. Like, I sometimes am just going to need to like cry it out and not make any sense. And I'm going to need you to just be by my side through it and cry with me through it. And so I think, especially in marriage, but also in friendships, there is that level of like, you're figuring it out for the first time, and your friends, if they really want to walk alongside you in it, are figuring it out for the first time with you. Or perhaps they've gone through grief as well, but your journeys look different. Like, and that's where I try to be very careful when I talk to somebody who is also going through grief, is to not project my own grief experience on them, but to use what I know and listen well and merge the two. So I think that's one thing. That's for the friends that want to be there, that want to understand, for the friends that are like in it with you for life. And then here's where the hard reality comes in. We talked about it a little bit before, but sometimes there are people that are in your life that are not going to be able to be the support you need, whether it be for a season or whether it be forever. When my mom first passed, one of my really close friends was showing up so consistently. She was checking in. And to be honest, the things that she was saying and the things that she was doing were not what I needed and were not helpful to me. And I found myself having to kind of take a step back, just kind of until I got my life together a little bit and could then meet her where she was at and realize like, okay, maybe it's okay that she wasn't able to support me in these couple months, but now we can walk forward together. It's kind of maybe sometimes like how there are certain people that like, they're not baby people, but they love like a toddler or a little kid. And so like maybe they're not going to want to hold your baby all the time, but when your kid's like running around and can play soccer with them, they're going to kind of like be more present. I think it's similar to that. But also the hard reality is there are going to be some friends that you thought were really good friends that were really showing up for you before loss, or maybe an early loss, but just are not the ones who are meant to be in your inner circle going forward. And there is a level where you have to protect your own peace and your own health. And maybe it's that you still stick around sometimes with these friends and you'll laugh about things and have like a sort of surface level time with them, but you're not going to go deep with them because maybe they can't. Maybe they don't know how in the season that you're in. And so that's where I want to encourage, if you are somebody who is a friend to somebody who is going through loss and you're kind of starting to feel them pull back or pull away, remember that it's not about you. And what I mean by that is this loss is something that like the person who's experiencing it so much needs to be poured into. Like, so yes, that does mean that you might be really uncomfortable at times and you may not know the things to say or do. And it's on you to figure it out. Yes, your person may have the words to be able to tell you what they need, but they may not. And so what I would encourage you in, and here are some practical tips: continue to talk about their person, continue to bring up their person, continue to be consistent, even if you don't get a response from them. I have a friend who, for like the first 2 years of my loss, texted me once a month. And I think I replied to her maybe once, but she would just consistently reach out. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, um, you were on my mind today. Hey, I had this memory of your mom that made me smile. Like, just reached out. And I honestly, it wasn't like I was reading those texts feeling so loved and so cared for. And yet I know that my lack of response, I'm sure, triggered in her, like, am I being annoying? Should I stop? And yet she didn't, like 2 years every month. And so I think that's where it really matters to continue to be consistent, because even if you're getting a response that feels kind of weird from the person who's grieving, you just being consistent. And yeah, maybe it means you need to change the method of how, you're showing up. But consistency is so important, especially because so many people tend to kind of move on with their lives, whereas grievers very much are still like in that grief and the reminders of it. I also think for those of you that are grieving, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I got a lot of thoughts. For those of you that are grieving, it is two things. Number one, it is completely okay when someone's like, hey, how are you? Or like, oh my gosh, so great to see you. For you to be honest that like, you're not doing okay today. Or if you set up plans and you need to cancel, like, you don't have to be this super perfect, bubbly, rainbows and butterflies friend. It's okay for you to take that time and just not be okay. It's okay for you to like, don't feel like you're being the Debbie Downer who's like talking about your grief, and like balancing that with, you're not just going to always be the Eeyore, but sometimes it will feel like you are always the Eeyore. I feel like I still feel that way sometimes, where I talk about my mom and I talk about grief and everyone's like, womp womp. But that's my life. And that's what I think is so important for friends and family and spouses to understand is this is your life now. Your life is tainted by grief. I don't even want to say tainted, but like your life is impacted by grief and will forever. It will ebb and flow, but it will always be there. And so I think that's also where, for the griever, it really is important to set boundaries and make sure that you are emotionally healthy and mentally healthy. And that if there are people who you feel like are zapping from that, you limit your time with them. You limit your interactions. You pour more into the people that are pouring into you and that are giving you life and giving you safety and giving you the space to be this new self of who you are. And that doesn't always mean the people that understand grief, but that means the people that are showing up for you and loving you well. And I think it's also really important to talk about the family dynamic, because this was something that was so interesting for me. So in my immediate family at the time, it was me, my two brothers, and my dad, right? Those were our like blood relatives. in our nuclear family who all experienced loss of my mom. And all four of us walked through it really, really differently. And that's because we're different people. We have different relationships with my mom. We're in different phases of life. And I think for a little while, I was sort of assuming that my brothers and my dad would process everything the same way I was. And that just wasn't true. Didn't mean one was worse or better or anything. But even now, what I find is that sometimes I'm just sort of expecting for us to see eye to eye on something relating to grief or relating to how we're processing the loss of my mom, and we're not. And it always kind of takes me off guard a little bit. And then I realize, like, again, we're all different people. We all had different relationships with my mom. We all see the world differently. And I think that's really common. I mean, I know it's really common in families when you experience loss, is like you all experience, especially if it's like two sisters, right? Or two brothers. You're like, well, we're both brothers. We both are brothers' sons who have lost our mom, right? But yet, like, you're still two different people and you're going to experience loss very differently. And I think when you have that language and you have that understanding, you can give a lot more grace and a lot more understanding and a lot more patience. Even if the people around you, maybe it's your immediate nuclear family, maybe it's aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, whatever, are all experiencing loss and walking through loss really differently. What I would also encourage you in is to not feel that there's a hierarchy within your family of loss. That was something I think I struggled with really early on, was feeling like I'm the daughter. So my, I don't know, cousin, my uncle, my whatever, doesn't have the same ability to grieve in the same way that I do, or doesn't have like my hierarchy of grief. Like, I'm higher up in the hierarchy. And I just realized, like, that is the dumbest way of thinking about things. Everybody is going to be able to grieve the same person in a profound way. And I think when we start to compare, or even compare, like, wow, they don't seem sad at all, there is such a harm in that. There can be such division. And so what I would encourage you in is, like, recognize that everybody is going to grieve. Not everybody is going to grieve in a way that you understand. Not everybody is going to grieve in a way that you think is right. Sometimes it may feel like you in your own grief are supporting somebody else in their grief. And you're like, why am I doing this? Like, I should just be able to grieve myself. But that is what loving one another well is all about. And yes, sometimes you need to put a boundary. Sometimes you need to be like, I can't deal with this right now. I can't deal with pretending like I'm not grieving so that I can support you in your grief, if that's what they're asking. But when you have the capacity, I think it really matters to support each person and to come together in grief, especially within a family. So what I hope to encourage you with, whether you are someone who is walking through grief or whether you are somebody who is loving somebody who is walking through grief, is that reminder that who you as the griever, or who your friend as the griever is, who the griever was before grief, is going to be a very different person than after grief. And yes, there are going to be things that are still the same. But again, grief changes who you are. Grief makes you see what's important in life. Grief makes you show up really authentically. And sometimes, yeah, deal with the things that are super painful, maybe in good ways, maybe in not so great ways. Maybe you have a friend who's walking through grief and you're like, wow, they're so angry. And it's because grief affects all of us differently. So sometimes you're going to have a friend that just feels like they always have a twinge of sadness. Sometimes you're going to be like, wow, my friend is so angry and short-tempered. Sometimes you're going to be like, wow, my friend doesn't really seem to care about the things we used to do. And I would say that all of that is a response to grief. Some of it is healthier than others. Some of it is everyone's on their processing things differently. But that's where it matters to just love your friends so well and have that understanding that they are going to be a different person in so many ways now that they've experienced this like traumatic brain injury of grief. And for those of us that are grieving and that have lost somebody, to just give ourselves so much grace. Give yourself so much grace that you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be the perfect friend. You don't have to be the one who shows up the way you used to show up, who is selfless the way you used to be selfless, who is happy and jovial the way you used to be. It is okay to be exactly the way that you are and to continue to seek growth and health and process like all of it. And so I just hope that this opens up the ability to have conversations with friends, with loved ones, with your spouse, to know that it's not personal, that if they're seeming angry with you, they're probably not angry with you. It's probably something maybe a little bit deeper in grief. And to just really give so much grace and so much understanding and so much love through all of it. So I just want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for listening, for watching, however you're tuning in. It truly, truly, truly means the world. If this episode encouraged you, if you are that friend, or if you are the griever and you're like, oh, I got to share it with so-and-so, send it to them. Share it with your friend. Share it with your spouse. If you're like, oh my gosh, this gave me language that my spouse and I have been talking about, or my friend and I have been talking about, like, share it with them. And be sure to hit subscribe on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform so that you don't miss what's next. And come over and say hi on Instagram at Be the Bigger Person Pod, because I'd love to connect with you there. So I will see you around, and I can't wait to chat with you on the next episode of Be the Bigger Person podcast.